South African two-time Olympics champion Caster Semenya today returning to the European Court of Human Rights in her fight against newly implemented World Athletics rules. This is after the body mandated the lowering of natural testosterone levels for women to participate in certain competitions. The South African Human Rights Commission has intervened as a friend of the court. The commissioner of the South African Human Rights Commission is Tshepo, Madlingozi, who talks to us from Strasbourg. This is in France. Mr. Madlingozi, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. So give us a quick summary of what happened in court today.
Well, good evening to you and to your viewers. Today was a very historic day. There was Caster Semenya at the highest court of human rights in Europe, taking on one of the most powerful states in the world, Switzerland. So today, this is the last stage of the hearing. So the Swiss government is the one that took the case to appeal, in a sense. So today it presented its case, arguing that it does not have jurisdiction to hear the case, and therefore they cannot be found to have been in violation of Ms. Semenya's right. Ms. Semenya's legal team presented a very powerful, maybe I'm biased, powerful submissions. Basically, number one, stating very, very clearly that sports people are human beings and therefore they cannot waive their human rights. But then secondly, that the regulations that were introduced, there is no evidence that they actually lead to, to the reduction of testosterone. And lastly, that there's not been any evidence that without the DSD, the drugs that the one Caster to take, it leads to performance advantage. So really, the court had both sides, a 17-member court of the highest court in Europe on matters of human rights, ask both sides of parties a lot of questions, and the court at the end adjourned for deliberation.
We'll talk about when it is that you are told the judgment or the ruling will be handed down. But let's talk about yourselves, the South African Human Rights. You've now been admitted as a friend of the court. What were your contributions, if any?
Well, our submissions are twofold. Number one, that, intersex people are people who have been marginalized in society, in various professions, and that, that marginalization really need to stop. Secondly, we bring to the court's attention a rich body of jurisprudence from the South African Human Rights Court on how to balance and, have a proportionality test when dealing with competing rights. The South African Human Rights, South African Constitutional Court has really done a lot of good work in terms of balancing different interests, but also been very, very clear that ultimately sports people are also human beings, and that as human beings, they should not be made to waive their human rights.
The verdict, when is that likely to come out?
Well, it's going to take months. As I said, this is the highest court in Europe. This is a 17-member court. And therefore, we expect the judgment to, take anything between 6 to 8 months. Certainly not a matter of weeks, but a matter of months.
And I think what then hinges on that is whether or not Caster Semenya still has it in her to compete at the level at which she was before she was stopped. What do you know of her interest in even competing anymore?
One of the most compelling moments today was when her lawyers were making submissions. They concluded their submissions by, reading an extract from Caster Semenya's biography, where she is very, very clear that she's not, bringing this case for herself. She's bringing a case for all the women who are forced to correct their natural bodies. She's bringing this case on behalf of all the young girls who look different to other people. So really, Ms. Semenya is not doing this case for herself. She's doing this for her dignity, number one, but number two, to assert the rights of every woman to compete, not to be forced to take, drugs that, are not shown to even work. So it's very clear that, at the age of 33, she might not be able to compete at that level, but this is a matter of principle, and she's bringing this case on behalf of all marginalized people.
It's very clear indeed. Let's talk about whether she had anything to say. I know that you've just quoted an extract from her book, but the understanding is that she physically was at court. What was her take on the entire matter? Because this now wraps up what has been a marathon court process.
Indeed, it's been a marathon process. We're talking about, the first incident taking place in 2018, where she was put aside and subjected to verification tests. Very, very invasive, very, very humiliating. 2018, and at two platforms or two forums, she brought her matter. So this is the last stage. It is the highest, court of human rights. And you could see she was sitting there in front of the court and very, very proud, very, very dignified that she can face, the might of the, state of Switzerland. The United Kingdom had intervened on the side of the World Athletics body. She's taking on the World Athletics body. She's taking on a lot of private commercial interests. And very, very proud that she's doing so, not for herself, for other people. Afterwards, I spoke to her and I said, Caster, how do you feel? I don't know, get sharp, you feel sharp, So this is a person who feels that she's been vindicated, no matter, what happens. She's been able to not give up. She's been able to, not allow herself to take medical, treatment that she doesn't consent to. So, I didn't speak to her for a long time because, as you can imagine, she was in high demand. But, she looked very dignified. She looked very satisfied. And she was happy that she's fighting this case for the good of humanity.
Final question to you, sir. If the verdict does not go her way, are there any other avenues here? You've already said the European Court of Human Rights is possibly the highest. Where else could she go after this?
This is the highest, body. The highest body in terms of sports is a court of arbitration. She has already been there. She has already been to the Swiss federal courts. She's already been to a lower chamber in the European Court of Human Rights. And now she was at the highest chamber, the Grand Chamber. So really, this is the last stage in the proceedings.
Let me thank you very much for your time, Tshepo Madlingozi.